The Joseon Dynasty of Korea was a realm built on strict Confucian order, meticulous ritual, and profound respect for hierarchy. The royal palace, or gyeongbokgung, was a place of exquisite beauty, where every movement and every breath was governed by centuries of tradition. That is the image of tranquil power history presents. The terrifying truth, hidden deep within the Nae-myeongbu, the women's palace, is that the highest act of royal punishment was a mandated ritualistic suicide by poison. When a queen or high-ranking consort was condemned, the executioners arrived not with a sword, but with a small, unassuming bowl of medicine. This method was known as a sayak, execution by medicine or poison, and it was the most feared decree in the kingdom. It was a terrifying legal loophole that allowed the king to eliminate his most powerful rivals, often women, while preserving the dignity of their rank and avoiding the polluting shame of a public execution. The greatest secret of the Joseon throne is that the beauty and tranquility of the royal palace concealed a brutal, silent tradition where the most powerful women were forced to become their own executioners. Don't you dare look away. Watch this entire deep dive documentary and subscribe to this channel, and you will learn the one shocking record that proves a queen was forced to drink the deadly poison in front of her own weeping son. The seeds of this ritualistic murder were sown by the fierce, cold-blooded rivalry that defined the women's palace. The women's palace, or Nae-myeongbu, was a complex, rigid hierarchy of queens, consorts, and low-ranking court ladies. Unlike Western harem systems, the Joseon system was governed by strict rank, creating a constant cold war of position, influence, and survival. The competition among the women was absolutely ruthless. The queen, consorts, and especially the royal mother, Daebi, were constantly plotting against each other, using slander, false accusations of witchcraft, and poison to sabotage rivals who threatened their own son's claim to the throne. The ultimate goal was to ensure their son, the Wonja, crown prince, was safely installed. The history of the Joseon court is filled with terrifying examples of this rivalry. Consorts who bore the king a son were immediately elevated, becoming primary targets. The official records often conceal the true cause of death for these women, frequently citing illness or loss of royal favor, when the reality was a slow-acting poison administered by a rival's maid. This situation illustrates the terrifying historical reality of hyper-competitive enclosed systems. When the ultimate prize, the throne, is only accessible through internal maneuvering, the rivalry becomes absolute and justifies any form of psychological or physical violence, a dynamic seen in modern corporate and political backstabbing. But the most infamous punishment was reserved for the consort who dared to challenge the king's authority, a chilling fate known as the gift of death. The sayak, execution by medicine poison, was a chilling fusion of royal authority and aesthetic cruelty. It was deemed the most honorable way to die, reserved for the highest nobility, queens, princes, and powerful ministers, who were spared the shame of execution by a common hand. The ritual was precise and emotionally devastating. The king would send a loyal official bearing the king's personal decree and a bowl of specially prepared, often beautiful, black or dark red liquid. The official would present the bowl, and the condemned noble was expected to receive it with absolute deference, thank the king for his grace, and drink it without hesitation. The poison used was usually highly concentrated arsenic or aconite, designed to cause a rapid, agonizing collapse. If the noble hesitated, the officials were commanded to force the poison down their throat. This ritual forced the victim to acknowledge the justice of the king's decision in their final moments. This demonstrates the ultimate tyranny of symbolic power. The Joseon court showed that the highest form of political control is not physical dominance, but the absolute psychological control that forces the condemned to perform their own execution, sanctifying the ruler's decision. But the most tragic example involves a famous consort who was poisoned by her own mother-in-law, a queen mother whose ruthless ambition knew no family bounds. The Daebi, Queen Mother, was the most terrifying political force in the Joseon court, wielding immense power over the king himself. Her primary loyalty was not to her son's wife or concubines, but to the dynasty and the purity of the succession. The greatest crime committed by a Daebi was the ruthless elimination of a powerful consort named Jang Huibin. Jang Huibin, a brilliant, ambitious woman, had produced a male heir, making her a direct threat to the established queen and the political faction supported by the Queen Mother. The Daebi launched a relentless campaign of slander and political maneuvering against her. The final act was the condemnation of Yang Huibin to Sayak. The Queen Mother, ensuring the order was followed, forced the king, her son, to agree to the execution of his own beloved consort. This demonstrated that matriarchal political loyalty was far stronger than romantic or maternal love. This is a chilling historical case study in intergenerational power struggles. The Queen Mother sacrifices her son's happiness and the life of his consort to preserve her own entrenched authority and the preferred political order, proving that power always trumps personal bonds. But the final, deepest betrayal was the ritual reserved for the princes who were executed for treason, a horrifying act that ensured their memory was completely erased from the kingdom. For princes who committed treason or were eliminated as political rivals, the punishment went beyond mere execution. It targeted their existence in the afterlife. This was the ultimate terror of the Joseon court. A prince condemned for treason was not granted a royal tomb. Instead, his name was struck from the royal lineage records, and his body was buried in a simple, unmarked grave in a remote, unofficial location, often in the mountains far from the capital. This process was known as damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. This ritual ensured that the prince's spirit could not find peace or be honored by his descendants. He was officially stripped of his existence, his memory erased from the Confucian records that governed society. The execution by Sayak might kill the body, but the erasure of the tomb killed the soul and the political legacy. This is the ultimate historical example of totalitarian control over truth. The Joseon court proves that the most powerful tool of tyranny is not just the executioner's blade, but the ability to rewrite history and destroy the memory of those who oppose the regime. We have seen the ritual of death by medicine, but the deepest secret of the Joseon palace involves the very substance of the king's body, a belief that led to a horrifying custom of consuming the king's own bodily fluids. The most bizarre and medically shocking custom of the Joseon court involved the king's own bodily fluids. In the highly ritualized medical practices of the palace, there was a dark, persistent belief that the king's essence held powerful curative or protective properties. According to censored accounts of palace life, when the king was gravely ill, certain high-ranking officials or desperate family members would engage in the horrifying ritual of consuming the king's waste products, such as his feces or urine, mixed into traditional medicine. This was done out of a desperate, superstitious belief that by ingesting the king's physical essence, they could either cure him or absorb his power and protect themselves from illness. This ritual was performed in the deep secrecy of the inner palace, often managed by the royal physicians who themselves were under immense pressure to save the king. The terrifying reality was that the most refined court on earth resorted to a primal, unsanitary, and ultimately useless act of desperate superstition. This situation illustrates the ultimate historical paradox of power and superstition. Even in a state governed by rational Confucian philosophy, fear and the desperate need to control the life of the absolute ruler drove the elite to perform acts of profound medical depravity, proving that fear dismantles logic in all eras. But the most terrifying victim of the royal mother's power was not a consort, but the king's own grandfather, a secret act of regicide disguised as political execution. While the Sayak ritual was reserved for female nobility, the punishment for a disgraced prince was often one of the most unique and horrifying executions in global history. The tragic fate of Crown Prince Sado in the 18th century remains the darkest secret of the Joseon Dynasty. Prince Sado, deemed mentally unstable and prone to violence, was not executed by sword or poison. His father, King Yeongjo, manipulated by political rivals and his own queen, sentenced his son to an agonizing, prolonged death. Sado was forced to climb into a large, heavy wooden rice chest, a simple storage box, where he was sealed. The prince was left inside the chest for 8 days in the summer heat, with no food or water. The execution was slow, agonizing, and carried out with a terrible, false legitimacy. This method was chosen to avoid shedding royal blood, adhering to the ancient tradition of ritual purity, while maximizing the psychological terror of suffocation and starvation. This is the ultimate example of cruelty masked by ritual. The king's decision was an act of both political necessity and profound personal failure, proving that sometimes the most sophisticated monarchies devise the most primitive and agonizing methods of murder to satisfy legal and spiritual requirements. But the true depth of the palace's depravity was revealed when high-ranking officials were subjected to a terrifying form of torture that was both public and deeply humiliating. For high-ranking ministers or scholars who defied the king's authority, the punishment was swift, brutal, and terrifyingly public. While the elite faced Sayak, ministers were often subjected to public beheading, an act designed to destroy their political faction and strike absolute fear into the hearts of their followers. The public execution of a high-ranking minister was a meticulously staged event. The condemned would be marched through the capital city in a humiliating procession, often forced to wear a heavy wooden kang, neck stock. The execution was carried out quickly by a professional executioner, but the crucial act followed: the display of the severed head in a public place, often near the palace gates, as a grim, visual warning. This ritual of public annihilation was not only aimed at the victim, but at their entire political faction. The sight of their leader's head on display was meant to paralyze the opposition and ensure absolute silence. This demonstrates the historical function of spectacle as a political tool. Joseon rulers understood that fear is the most effective form of governance, using highly public graphic displays of violence to maintain control, a strategy employed by modern dictatorships. But the constant tension in the women's palace led to a frightening, pervasive disease, a sickness fueled by fear and confinement. The women's palace, despite its beauty, was a psychological prison. The constant surveillance, the rigid hierarchy, the political plotting, and the absolute lack of freedom led to a distinct, terrifying phenomenon known as the harem sickness, or the disease of confinement. This was a complex psychological disorder that manifested physically: chronic depression, profound hysteria, unexplained physical pain, digestive collapse, and mental detachment. The women, trapped in a world where their only value was their ability to bear a male heir, often spiraled into deep despair when they failed to conceive or when their son was politically threatened. The royal physicians, unable to diagnose the psychological roots of the illness, often resorted to primitive, useless cures, further exacerbating the suffering. The most tragic victims were those women who, driven mad by the stress, committed suicide or were deemed insane and quietly removed from the palace, a political elimination disguised as a medical removal. This is a chilling historical precedent for stress-induced somatic illness. It proves that even the most beautiful and luxurious confinement cannot shield people from the devastating psychological effects of absolute powerlessness and perpetual, intense social competition. But the most disturbing discovery made by historians concerns the king's own mother. a powerful queen who was personally involved in a terrifying assassination plot. While the Daebi, Queen Mother, was meant to be the pillar of royal stability, her pursuit of power often led to unthinkable crimes against her own family. The most direct evidence of her ruthlessness concerns the mysterious death of one of the king's own close advisors. Records suggest that a Daebi, fearing that a specific independent-minded royal advisor was gaining too much influence over her son, the king, ordered his silent assassination. The official was found dead. The cause ruled a sudden stroke. However, the true source was a slow-acting herbal poison administered over weeks, likely by a maid loyal to the Daebi. The most terrifying part of this assassination was the motive. The advisor was plotting against the Daebi, not the king. The royal mother used the immense power of the throne to neutralize a personal political threat, proving that the king himself was often secondary to the matriarchal power struggle in the palace. This illustrates the ultimate weaponization of family loyalty. The royal mother used her trusted status to commit the highest form of treason, confirming that in systems of high power, the greatest threat often comes from the most intimate, supposedly trusted source. We have seen the ritual of death and the psychological torment, but the final, darkest secret of the Joseon palace involves a terrifying hidden chamber, a place where the deposed queen was tortured in secret. The punishment for a queen who fell from grace was not the quick Syak ritual. It was a terrifying, prolonged form of psychological and physical torture designed to break her spirit before her body. The fate of Queen Yun, later known as the deposed Queen Yun, who was stripped of her title, stands as one of the darkest secrets of the Joseon court. After her removal, the deposed queen was often imprisoned in a tiny, isolated chamber within the women's palace. This confinement was often paired with a barbaric ritual known as the ritual of stripping, where all her luxurious robes, jewels, and symbols of royalty were publicly and slowly removed by court ladies. A profound humiliation and an act of symbolic annihilation. But the true terror was the torture she endured while imprisoned. While the official records remain silent, historical whispers confirm that the queen was subject to sleep deprivation, forced malnutrition, and subtle physical beatings by the court ladies and eunuchs who once served her, all done in secret to avoid leaving visible marks. The goal was to force her to confess to fabricated crimes that would justify her removal and eventual execution. This situation illustrates the chilling historical effectiveness of status annihilation. The Joseon court understood that destroying a person's identity and status is often a more effective form of torture than mere physical pain, a tactic employed in political prisons worldwide. But the most terrifying act of political revenge was reserved for the officials who opposed the king, a form of execution so barbaric it involved the systematic destruction of their entire family. For high treason or severe opposition to the king, the Joseon dynasty had a devastating, chilling method of political vengeance known as the punishment of the 3 clans, or punishment of the 9 clans in its most extreme form. This was a terrifying, systematic annihilation of the traitor's entire extended family. The 3 clans usually meant the traitor's paternal relatives, the maternal relatives, and the relatives of his wife. All members of these clans, including elderly relatives, young children, and even distant cousins, were subject to execution, exile, or enslavement. This was done to ensure the complete eradication of the traitor's political influence and bloodline. The chilling logic was that treason was a genetic and familial contagion. By destroying the entire clan, the king ensured that no future rebellion or political challenge could ever arise from that family line. The terror was absolute. Every member of the family lived under the perpetual threat of annihilation due to the actions of one relative. This barbaric policy serves as the ultimate historical warning against collective punishment. The Joseon system showed that the greatest leverage of a dictator is the threat of violence against innocent family members. a tactic used to enforce absolute obedience and loyalty in totalitarian states. But the most enduring secret of the women's palace was the subtle, long-term poisoning of the king himself, a plot orchestrated not by a consort, but by the queen mother who ruled from the shadows. While the Sayak poison was fast and final, the ultimate tool of control wielded by the most ambitious royal mothers was the slow, long-term poisoning of their own sons, the kings. This was done not to kill them immediately, but to weaken their will, cloud their judgment, and ensure their dependence on the queen mother. Historical records hint at the systematic use of mild, traditional Korean herbs and tonics that, when consumed daily, contained small amounts of heavy metals or neurotoxins. This would induce chronic illness, severe headaches, memory loss, and mental instability, all symptoms easily attributed to the stress of ruling. The king would suffer a slow, agonizing decline, becoming emotionally and politically reliant on the queen mother, who alone controlled his medicines and diet. This allowed the royal mother to rule the kingdom de facto, making the king a puppet confined to his sickbed. This is the ultimate example of medical manipulation for political gain. The Joseon court proves that controlling a ruler's health is the most effective way to seize power without committing overt treason, a tactic that turns the palace into a hidden infirmary of political control. But the final shocking discovery was the secret purpose of the executioner's cord, a final act that guaranteed the criminal's soul would wander forever. While the Joseon court preferred Sayak for its cleanliness, a lesser-used but equally chilling method of execution for lower-ranking officials was strangulation by a specially prepared cord. This method was designed not just to kill the body, but to destroy the soul's path to the afterlife. The executioner's cord was often made of dark, rough hemp, deliberately prepared and knotted. The final act of strangulation was performed not just to break the neck, but to prevent the victim from speaking their final wishes or confession. This denial of last rites and the brutal nature of the death were believed to condemn the soul to wander the spirit world without peace or honor. Furthermore, the body of the executed was often buried in an unmarked, polluted area, denied the necessary Confucian rituals. This ritualistic denial of dignity ensured that the punishment was total, affecting not only the person's life, but their eternal existence. This reveals the ultimate historical weaponization of religious belief for state terror. The Joseon Dynasty showed that the threat of eternal spiritual damnation can be a far more powerful tool for political obedience than any physical torture. We have witnessed the terror of the palace. Now, for the final critical verdict, we must confront the moral cost of Joseon's relentless pursuit of purity. We have unsealed the terrifying secrets of the Joseon Dynasty, the cold, ritualistic execution by medicine, the brutal punishment of the crown prince in the rice chest, the systemic annihilation of entire families, and the silent, deadly manipulation by the royal mothers. The Joseon Dynasty, for all its beauty and Confucian refinement, enforced its power through an absolute tyranny that extended to the destruction of memory, the poisoning of its own king, and the spiritual annihilation of its rivals. The crown of dread in Seoul was cold, beautiful, and utterly unforgiving. We have revealed the entire horrifying truth. But now, we turn the final question to you, the crown of dread audience. The Joseon Dynasty executed its princes by sealing them in a rice chest, Prince Sato, or forced its queens to drink poison, Sayak, to avoid shedding royal blood and maintain ritual purity. Is this adherence to a cold, ritualistic form of murder, designed to look clean and honorable, a greater psychological act of cruelty than the brutal, simple decapitations of other monarchies? Let the world know your verdict. Drop your opinion in the comments below. Subscribe to Crown of Dread for more hidden history. And join us next time as we unearth the terrifying stories of blood and betrayal from the secret courts of the ancient Incas.